Apple just added a new phone to their iPhone 16 lineup. But in my opinion, Apple just really missed the mark with this phone. But more than anything, it just makes their phone lineup more confusing. Here's why. So the iPhone 16e sits in a very weird spot on Apple's phone lineup. Before, the choice was simple if you were buying a new phone from Apple. You could go with the SE if you wanted a very cheap phone, or if you had more money to spend, you could go with one of their flagship phones, such as the 14, the 15, the 16. But now with the release of the 16e, this makes it a bit more confusing because you're getting a lot of the 16 features, but a few of past models such as the 14, but it's still not at a great price. $600 for a sort of entry-level phone isn't really great for most people. So I feel like most people might even buy the SE still today, even though the design is about 10 years old, kind of. The 16e is definitely a very innovative phone, but I feel like it makes the lineup way more confusing. Let's get into the video. So let's start with what the iPhone 16e is. I've heard many people saying that this is Apple's iPhone SE replacement, but in reality, I don't think it is because of the price point it's at. The iPhone SE launched at $349, while the iPhone 16e comes in at $599 at MSRP. So that's just a lot more than what the iPhone SE originally retailed as. The second reason why this isn't really an iPhone SE, and that's why they went with the newer name, is that the iPhone SE was really just an old iPhone with a new processor in it, which was why it was really so much cheaper than all the other iPhones at this time. But the iPhone 16e, on the other hand, is a completely new phone. While it may look slightly reminiscent to the iPhone SE on the back of the phone, kind of mixed with an iPhone 14, and on the front you have the iPhone 14 screen, it is a lot different from that on the inside. First of all, there's a brand new chip, which is Apple's latest Wi-Fi and cellular chip that they made in-house. But I guess Apple is doing this to expand on their profit margins, which, you know, Tim Cook really loves his profit margins. The other new thing is that it has a completely redesigned battery, which if you look at the iPhone 16 versus the 16e, the 16e somehow has longer battery life than the 16, which is insane because if you really care a lot about your battery life, and don't care about all the other features that the 16 has better than the 16e, I could see someone buying a 16e just because it has so much more battery life, and if they want to save a few bucks. That is a very enticing feature. Not only that, but a few things lead me to believe that the camera is also a completely new design, which I'll get to later, but it is very interesting all the new innovations that Apple is putting into this 16e phone. There's also all the Apple Intelligence AI features. You get the new A18 chip, although there is a caveat with that. They actually removed a few GPU cores, which is interesting, so it's a binned chip rather than the full A18 chip on the iPhone 16. You could argue these are amazing features to the iPhone 16e, but I feel like this makes the lineup more confusing. If you're into technology and Apple products and phones, you might know all the differences between the 14, the 15, the 16, and the 16e. But if you're not so into technology, you might be confused by this new phone because it has so many of the new features, but also some of them are not there and you get the features from the older phones. So it's very confusing in this lineup. Another reason why it's so confusing is just the price point where it's at. The iPhone SE at $349 was at a very distinct price point for people who wanted a cheap iPhone and they didn't need all the features of the flagship models at that time. But because of the just below $600 MSRP of the iPhone 16e, it puts it in a completely different place on the price range of this phone. It's only just less than $200 less than the iPhone 16, but you may say, oh, that's quite a bit of difference. It's not as drastic as the difference of the iPhone SE versus the flagship phone at that time. So this really leads me to believe that Apple may create a new iPhone SE sometime, but at the same time, Apple is really putting in a lot of R&D into this phone, and if they released an SE, that would add so much more confusion to their lineup. I feel like Apple really missed the mark with how they priced this phone and also just the features they put in there. There's so many new innovations with this phone, from the battery life to the chip to the Apple modem to the camera, which I'll talk about later, which may be new innovation. But the price point, again, just makes it in such a weird spot for Apple to price it at, that their consumers might not want to upgrade to this phone from an SE. Another thing I've heard is some people actually like the size of the SE over the latest models, but I don't think Apple will be releasing a new small phone just because it doesn't have enough market share, even though there's still quite a few people who really like these smaller phones. And you know how I was hinting about a camera innovation in the iPhone 16e? Well, I feel like the camera on the 16e is something completely different that we've never seen before from Apple. You've probably seen the meme before by now of people putting iPhones on a flat surface and them wobbling around a ton. And that's because the cameras protrude from the phone so much that it just wobbles around. But based on Apple's press releases, the camera protrusion from that phone did not seem to be as bad as the 16 and the 16 Pro, which may hint that they are using a different camera design than those cameras. Apple said in their press release that it was a 48 megapixel sensor. They said nothing about it being new, which could cause people to think that it's the same 48 megapixel sensor on the iPhone 15 or on the iPhone 16. But what leads me to believe that it is not is just because it doesn't protrude as much from the back of the phone, which could mean that is a smaller sensor, or it is a new lens design, or just a completely new camera and lens design in total. And if Apple found a way to keep the same camera quality while shrinking the footprint of the lens and the camera, this could lead to much better iPhone designs in the future, where the camera isn't sticking out of the back of the phone as much, which causes, when you set the phone down, for it to wobble around a ton. What further backs up this point is that some people have rumored leaks of the iPhone 17 Pro having a larger camera bump on the back, which could mean that Apple is trying to find a remedy for the phone wobbling on a table or a surface. So if Apple finds a way to shrink the camera footprint on the iPhone 16e, which could definitely be possible, we'll have to wait until people get their hands on the phone to see if it's any different. But this could be a groundbreaking feature for just the portability of Apple's phones if they're able to shrink the footprint of that camera. So in conclusion, the iPhone 16e is quite an astonishing phone, but not at an amazing price. And overall, this just makes Apple's phone lineup even more complex, because now you can still probably buy the SE at many retailers, but you have the 14, the 15, the 16, the 16E and the 16 Plus. You have all these phones in their 16 and their flagship lineup, and people may confuse the 16E for just a normal iPhone 16, or they might just be more confused by this new phone. But really, we just have to wait and see until reviewers get their hands on it, and we have to see what happens with this phone in terms of pricing, in terms of features, and how good it works in the real world. I probably won't get one of those phones into review unless if this video suddenly monetizes my channel somehow, which probably won't happen. But I still make quite a bit of content regarding the Apple ecosystem. So if you're interested in that stuff, please consider subscribing and drop a comment below on what video you'd like to see me do next time. Right now I'm working on an iPhone 13 very long-term review in 2025. So if you want to see that and see if that might be a good option for your next phone, if you're upgrading from an older one such as 7 or even an SE, I'll definitely make that video and I might compare it to a few other phones. Anyways, thanks for watching this video. Please consider subscribing and I'll see you in the next one.